Hello, everyone. Madilynndale here, and today I've got another amazing guest for you guys to check out. He's got a ton of awesome crime and thriller books out there that I've been checking out, and they seem like an exciting read. So I'm going to bring him in and let him introduce himself, and we'll go from there. So, all right, Dan, welcome to the show. Go ahead and tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, hello, Maddie, and anyone listening. It's great to be here. I appreciate the invite. I'm a crime novelist, and I don't know, over 24 books out. And I just love to express myself, either through my writing or through music. I also played a tenor saxophone in a bunch of bands as well. So I have this need to be creative or something. My mind doesn't shut off, which is a blessing and a curse at times.
I feel that when you try to sleep, it's like, nope, your brain's just going to keep going. Do you ever struggle with like relaxing to like rest because the stories won't turn off in your head? Yes.
And many times when I sit down or I lay down at nighttime and I try to quiet my mind goes, "Ooh, thank God you're here." I said, "I've been waiting all day to talk to you," you know. But many times I do relax. I live in Southwest Florida, so we have we have the beaches to go to and just sit there and just look out and make a conscious effort to kind of clear your head. And one of the things that's relating to writing, for me anyway, is that I'm what they call a discovery writer. So it's not quite total pantsing. But I have an idea and I have a little bit of a framework, but not an outline in the traditional sense. And then I go with the characters and at times paint yourself into a corner. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. Yeah. So there's an issue and you're stuck. You go, wow, what do I do now? And what I've learned to do at this point is to trust myself when I get to those corners, and I will put it aside and then move on to something else that needs to get written anyway, rather than using that as an excuse to say, oh, I can't go on, it's too hard. And then I let my subconscious, it's kind of weird, and I'm not really that type of a person, but usually in the morning when I wake up, I never get out of bed right away. I lay there and I try to clear my mind. And then if I have a plot problem, I try to put it in my head, but not think about it. It's not like consciously thinking about it. I just like let it lay there. And then all of a sudden, a couple, ideas start to drift in. You go, oh, no, that doesn't work. And again, I push them out. I consciously try to push them away. And then all of a sudden you go, you know what, that might work. And then I get up and I write it down. So I do relax. I think it's important. I exercise and walk. I walk, 5 days a week and go to the gym the other 2 days. And I know that that's a great stress reliever and also a way to, I believe, to release some creative forces in your head. So I'm a firm believer in the physical helps the mental.
I agree. And you actually touched on a topic I like to touch on with anybody I chat with, which is self-care. And that sounds actually like a great way to keep like taking care of yourself mentally and physically.
Yes, I think it's really important. And it's been proven over and over. And especially now I'm getting up there in a couple of years. I mean, not so far up the ladder, but I'm definitely climbing. Although I can still act immaturely. And it's really important that the physical, taking care of yourself physically, there's been proven to show that it keeps the noggin going. It really does help. And I think that, it's such as things like writing and playing music, force your mind to think in different ways and to become active and completely engaged. And I think that's good for your mental health. If not, okay. At least I'm happy as I get there, as I get to the end of the line. So I'm firmly believe in that. And I tell everyone, especially those that are taking care of someone else or have a burden, is you can't take care of someone else if you can't take care of yourself first. So
exactly.
Yes. And I'm also pretty selfish in terms of protecting myself, in terms of time for myself. I need my space. If I want to be happy, or if I'm married. If my wife wants me to be happy, I need that time to do my writing and to play my music.
Mhm.
And then I'll do almost anything, so I guard my own time as maybe like self-care.
That's excellent. And that is very important because I am the same way. I'm like, okay, like I will tell my husband, we have a 4-year-old, and I'm like, just give me like this amount of time and I'll be good. So like, I got to have a little bit of me time, even if it's just spent doing like writing. Cause I do a lot of my writing in a journal or like in a notebook before I put it on the computer. And that's something, it helps me like ground, so to speak. So
I think you're smart to do that. And, we're kind of taught, that it's selfish being that way, and, oh my gosh, you have a baby, you should take care, but you can't be the best mom you could be if you have no time for yourself.
Yes. And there's so many moms that will argue that. I hate it. I'm just like, you got to take care of yourself. Yes.
1,000%.
They're important, but you've got to, like, you need to take care of you to take care of them, because if you fall apart, who's going to take care of them,
Right. 100%. You got, I think you have to take care of yourself. And again, some of that is just this, having time to yourself, no matter what it is that you do. And as a writer, one of the other things that because I realize, and I'm happy to be talking to a young mom with children. So you have big responsibilities, right? So I write every day, and I write for hours every day. So I get that most people don't have the time to do that. I'm in a position that I'm able to do this now. But my advice is that whatever you're able to allocate, a busy single mom, maybe working a job with 2 kids or whatever it is, can only spare 1 hour a week, whatever she can. But if you can use the time to write, commit it. And whatever it is, that 1 hour a week, I don't care, come hell or high water, you better sit down and write. Otherwise, you're not a writer.
Yes. And honestly, it's really, as a mom, as a busy parent in general, you have to find just that fine line. So, and even if it's late at night and you get 5-10 minutes, that's still progress. So
right, exactly. Right. Because when it compounds, and after a year, if you wrote whatever it is, if you wrote for, let's just say 20 minutes a day, and you got 100 words each day, that's 700 a week. That's 35,000 a year. So within 2 years, you'd have a novel done with only 100 words a day.
Yep.
So it does pile on. I read something recently. It was kind of harsh, but and I'm trying to remember who the author was. A big time author, and he said about aspiring writers. He said, "You're not a writer. If you're an aspiring writer, you're not a writer. A writer writes. So move out of that aspiring background and start writing, and then you will become a writer."
It's good advice, though. I mean, you have to think of yourself in that mindset to become that. So I'm a writer, and it shifts your mind thinking over. So
yes, no matter what it is that you want to accomplish in life, whether you want to be a Formula One car racer or whatever it may be, or you want to play tennis, whatever, if you don't do it, you're never going to do it. And you're not going to become that. So,
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yes. So I'm going to shift gears here and ask you about your books. You mentioned in the document that I had you fill out for the blog that you've got a character. His name is Luca. Is that correct? Luca.
Frank Luca.
Tell us a little bit about him.
Well, it's a kind of an interesting story how it came about. I wrote a book. It was called "Am I the Killer?" and it explored a TBI, which is a traumatic brain injury.
Yes.
And I had watched a documentary about it, and it was very emotional. And I was crying because it was a family story, a family dynamic, etc. And as my mind tends to work, a day or two later, I started thinking, wow, could you imagine if you were accused of a crime and had a TBI and either A, didn't remember the events because of your injury, or B, used that as to hide behind and say, I don't know, and just to try to be that way. So I wrote this book, and there was this major crime that this person with the TBI was accused of, and I needed a detective to investigate. So I created this fella, Frank Lucca. And while I was writing that book, I enjoyed writing about him so much that he basically hijacked the book. And I had like 150,000 words of garbage. So, excuse me. So I had to pare it back. But I enjoyed writing about him so much that I promised myself that if this book sells, then I'll create a series around it. And I was fortunate that it did sell. Excuse me. And I created a series. But the original book was set up in the Northeast, which is where I was born anyway, in New York. And then I moved him down to Florida and set the book in the area that I live in. And now there's 15 books out. The 16th book I just sent to the editor on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty long series.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So to get in that mindset, starting out from book one, and that you said 17 is what you're working
16.
16.
Yes.
And are 16. You working on a 17?
Well, right now it's kind of weird because I'm such a productive. I have productivity shame essentially. And I'm not writing a book right now. In fact, today I just started a kind of a major character sketch on another story, another series that I want to start. And I framed out a little bit of the last book in the series, the Lucca series, which I think will be the last, but I'm going to leave the door open to bring it back as a PI or whatever.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of spin-off characters that I'm thinking about playing with off in their own series. So right now I'm not really writing. So I feel terrible.
It's that really, transition period.
Yeah. Usually I have something lined up right away. And I forgot where we were going there.
So I'll take us back. That's okay. Because you said if you got 16, what has it been like creating that many books with this character?
Well, to go back a little bit, when I first started writing, I was writing what I wanted to write, or whatever I felt like. And that led to a lot of genre hopping. So I wrote science fiction. I wrote coming of political thriller, a spy. I was writing all kinds of jazz. And I didn't get traction. Mm-hmm. And everyone I spoke to at the time told me that you need to write a series. You need to write a series. And the funny thing is I'm a voracious reader, but I'm not a series reader. Mm-hmm. So I guess I was kind of averse to that. And then I finally said, okay, this is the guy that I can build a series around. I think he's got enough depth as a character. And that's what I did. And the first 3 or 4 books came along pretty easily. And then I kind of was like, I'm starting to run out of ideas. And I felt I didn't want to repeat myself, and I didn't want to bore the readers. Fortunately, I'm not sure how I was able to do it, but I was able to continue to create new environments, new stories. And I think the craft of writing, my skill as a writer, only because writing again, whatever it is, 1 million words or 2 million words, you're going to have to get better at it, Yeah. So it actually, writing him is actually pretty easy. It's really easy because I really know him. I know the setting. I know the surrounding cast of characters. And I've weaved a lot of like subplot type of dynamics between the characters and who's sick and just various life events that kind of enhance the main stories. And I've also been able to, come up with some really good twists, I think, which were kind of lacking in the beginning, and which I think whatever that was 5 years ago or something, it wasn't a requirement. Now the genre, everybody wants these mind-blowing twists. I like them too, but they're not easy to come up with.
No, they're not.
They are not easy. So readers have said, let's put it that way, they're the ultimate judge, right? The readers, I could think a book is great, or I could think it's not so good. And then readers will go, wow, I really like that. That was phenomenal, etc. And everyone basically is unanimous in that the deeper you go into the series, the better it is. And because of that, I've actually tinkered around in my mind about, should I go back and rewrite the first couple of books and try to make it stronger? My read-through is good, and the stories are all what they call standalones, so you do not have to come in at one.
Okay.
You can come anywhere, and a lot of times, because I know that the books, let's say from 3, 4, 5 are much better, I try to steer the readers into 3. Somebody asks, what should I read? I go, pick up this one. And then you can always go back. And some do, and some just go forward. My next to the last book, which I guess was 13 or 14, was really very, very popular. Mm-hmm. So, I've been fortunate with that. But again, where I was going with that. So I have this series, and I have another series that's small that's not selling, and I just changed covers on that. It just had new covers that came out within, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago. Because I'm just a little bit of inside baseball. I don't know what your audience is for authors or not. But
it's a mix of both. So.
Okay, so people are familiar with trying to market the books, and then when you market the books, you essentially, for a book browser, looking on Amazon, for instance, they're going to see these little thumbnail sketches, and whether they click or not, you need them to click. And when they click, they go to your product page, and on the product page, then they can read the blurb, get an inside look, and then decide at that point. But we were finding that the covers were getting impressions, but not clicks.
It's always a pain in the butt, because I had a series I've had to go back and rework because of the same thing. Yeah,
it's very frustrating.
It is.
So we've just done that, and I'm going to see now whether or not that is going to help, because I really like that series. In fact, I wanted to write a couple more in that series. That's only 3 books long, that series at this point. Yeah. But I have to go where the demand is.
Yeah. And do you feel like you write more for like market versus yourself?
No, I write for myself. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. I've listened to, I've taken classes, I've spoken to a lot of people. I think, again, whatever works for you, go for it. You know, that's my policy. I don't want to be constrained by a market expectation. I'm not saying you can't write what readers, if a reader's going to pick up a murder mystery, they have expectations.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm not going to follow a new thing that, let's say serial killers, were big or probably still big. It's easier to do in the romance to express it, like, billionaire romance, all of that type, vampire romance. It's, again, people ride those waves. You have to be a fast writer as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
You got to be quick.
I'm definitely with you on that. I'm not a writer to write to market, because everything I write tends to pull in things from other genres too. And I'm like, well, here we go.
Yeah.
So it just kind of doesn't have its little place. It kind of breaks the mold, everything I write anyway.
But that's all right. You have to be who you are, right? If you can't, I wish I could write by like a Stephen King, for instance, but be yourself, because everyone else is taken.
Yes, agreed.
Whoever, I can't remember who said that, but that's a great line. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're going to turn people off with that.
Yeah, and it's okay, because one book doesn't fit all. Like, everybody has their own niche, so to speak. Right,
and I'm pretty clean. I'm not comfortable cursing, and I'm not comfortable writing curse words. Right, so I really don't curse in my Lucas series. And originally I did the beginning books had some F-bombs in them. But if I'm writing a character, that's the character, you have to do that. Yeah.
You have to follow their little, like, their personalities, their quirks and everything. Exactly. And it's weird how that comes out and it stays like that.
If you know the character, and I would say for myself that I was probably more plot driven than character driven. And now I'm paying much more attention to the character with the plot. Yeah. Because I think readers I don't know. As a reader, I'm just different. I'm who I am as a reader, right? I'm more interested in the plot. I really am, and maybe that's my author brain. What's the mechanics of what's the author, the writer doing here and how's he doing it? I'm reading like that, which takes a lot of enjoyment out,
Yeah. But it's hard not to think like that, especially once you've published books and you know everything that goes into it. It's like it stands out more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And sometimes, you go, oh, why'd you do that?
Yes.
And other times you go, why didn't I think of that?
Yes, it's so hard. You just can't turn it off.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what makes books so fascinating. There's gazillions of them out there, and they've been out there for centuries. And according to, I guess it was Shakespeare or something, there's only 7 stories, whatever they say. But yet we have books that, all kinds of things going on that they don't feel the same.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah. I mean.
So in writing these books and in writing in general, what have you found to be the biggest struggle for you?
Well, I feel like I'm pretty good at dialogue, and I've been told that I'm good at dialogue, and that might just be my observation skills orally and the fact that, how I approach that. Mm-hmm. But what I do struggle with is description, right? Because I'm conscious, I'm torn between this Hemingway, mm-hmm. Model or Solzhenitsyn, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, right? But he wasn't a fiction writer, mm-hmm. but he wrote some just incredibly powerful books that just put you in the cells with his protagonist. I can't do that, but how much do you do? How much do you say? Somebody walks in a room. Mm-hmm. What do I give them? What defines that space? Is it the red bar stool, the mirrored bar? What do I give them that can give them a sense of that space within, one sentence without going on and on and.
Yeah, too much dialogue description can really turn a reader off. So, the first one, which I feel like I've had a lot of authors use, is Tolkien. He gets over descriptive on some of his stuff. Yeah. And I'm like, if I pick up a book that is overly descriptive, I find myself kind of skipping ahead. And I know that's horrible because I know how much work goes into it. But at the same time, you're like, you want the story to move along, but not to keep you.
Yeah, Maddie, I am 100% with you. I skim when I get to that. I and maybe it's our short attention spans. I don't know. I really don't know what it is because I do give it a lot of thought. Mm-hmm. People who they go on and on and on. Some of these are very, very, very successful authors, much more successful than I am. And you read them, you go like, what? Come on, let's go. Get me to what's going on, As they say in murder mysteries, which is making this new series that I'm going to start harder because you have to drop a body on page 1, basically. Right?
Yeah.
That's what the reader's expecting, and that's what holds them right away. Mm-hmm. You got to have that. And that's what made like book 1 totally different because it was this brain injury thing that I needed to do more backstory to make it believable so that when it came to the crime that the reader would believe that this individual was impaired. So that took a little bit of footwork. And I had, I don't know what it was, 2 years after it came out, I went back and I cut like 4,000 words out of that book just to speed the read. Yeah. Because I felt it was just, I used to write very densely when I first started.
Yeah.
Because I do like information, but readers don't.
That's true.
Yeah. So yes, I am with you 1,000%. The story has got to move along today. It really does.
Yes.
So
I'm going to backtrack a little bit to the TBI stuff because I'm overly fascinated with TBIs. I have had my experience with that. Wow. Personally, I've had a TBI.
Oh my gosh.
So it sucks. It's not fun.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of curious, how much research did you go into to get all the info you needed for your story?
I did a lot. So there's a couple of things to go down because I love talking about this. What was funny about it? First of all, after I finished the book and I sent it to my editor, and my editor, although I'm not using that editor any longer, that editor was a New York guy, and he's tough as nails. I mean, just ridiculous. I sent him the manuscript, and I swear within an hour he calls me up, and he said, is this medical stuff true? Is this correct? Where'd you get this information from? He was grilling me on it.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, blah, 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 blah. I told him everything. And he goes, okay. Because otherwise, if this is not, you're going to lose everybody. Yeah. Nobody's going to read this. So and you may be familiar with this thing. It's called Crash Reel, REEL. Mm-hmm. And it was a documentary on HBO.
I think I've heard of it, but I haven't watched it.
Yeah, you should see it. So Shaun White, which was a snowboarder, the guy with the red hair. So this was when he was starting out, and it was him and another fella, and the other fellow was actually better than Shaun White, and it was to get on the Olympic trial. There was the Olympic trials to go on the Olympic team. So during this, they were filming these two guys competing against each other in, new tricks and all these flips. And during the filming, this one fella takes a fall and he lands on his head, and he became with a TBI. And then the whole story shifted from a sports-oriented one to a family dynamic and the guy's recovery. And I'm still getting the chills when I tell you this, And so at first it was, is this guy going to survive? And then how is he going to recover? And the family dynamic, the mother and father. And then he also had a younger brother who he was very close with, who had Down syndromes. So there was that whole, heart-tugging thing going on. I cried when I watched it.
Yeah, you're making me emotional just talking about it, because I having experienced that and lived through that myself, I understand how hard it is.
And what was amazing, well, I show you what is amazing. One of the things, and I was ignorant as well, right? If you think about it, is that sometimes you go, what the heck's wrong with that person? Because you don't see, if somebody's limping or has a prosthetic, automatically we're like sympathetic, right? Or empathetic, whatever. We go, oh, wow, man, that poor guy, this and that, you understand. Or somebody had a stroke, you can see it. Mm-hmm. But a TBI is like a hidden injury that you can't see, and you don't know the struggle that is going on. The inability, just for instance, to touch your nose, is so I don't know how even to say. I feel bad that you got to go through that,
It was my family. I'll tell you a little history of it. And my family was actually hit by a drunk driver. I was 12 at the time, I think. So, and I was actually super duper lucky because my traumatic brain injury, I had a subdural hematoma, which was bleeding on the brain and everything. Yeah. And I had swelling and stuff. But somehow, some way, my body soaked up most of the blood. I was in ICU for only 3 days, thankfully.
So they have to drill into the head to release the pressure. Yeah.
Thankfully. Yeah, right, but normally that's not the case, because my cousin, she was in a wreck 2 years ago and had to have that happen because she had a TBI. And it's just, recovery is definitely different for everybody. I was lucky that I did not, I guess because I was young enough and my body healed up the way it did, I didn't have to do a lot of therapy and stuff following, but my cousin did, and she struggled a lot more than what I did. But it's so different to see all the different variances in TBI injuries, because I'm a physical therapy assistant as well as doing all the author stuff. I only work occasionally, but it's that was one of the favorite things I studied, because I had experienced it. And it presents so different for every single one. It's insane. So
it's a big mountain to climb, just adding that knapsack with 10,000 pounds, just that the struggles of just normally growing up and figuring out life, and then have this thing happen to you, and not have, the full ability to.
It's like you have to figure out a different way around things to do just what somebody, it's almost like I'll use writing a research paper and stuff. Back up, my research paper the ones I had to write were 50 pages long, because it was in the middle field. So for a lot of the students, it was just straightforward. For me though, it was a windy road, because I couldn't focus on certain things and I'd get lost over here. but in a way, it's also helped with my storytelling because I have all of these stories. So,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
but
You
it's
see,
just,
and
it's
the way you look
fascinating.
at life is different
Mhm.
because, everybody let's just take an eyewitness, to anything,
Yeah.
really. A speeding
Yeah.
car doesn't have to be a crime. We see the same exact event, but we process it through the filter of what
Yes.
we've lived through.
Yeah.
And that's why we come up with these two different versions. Like, what? That guy looks threatening. Threatening? What are you talking about?
Yes.
That
Yes. That's
and I
so
get it.
cool.
I definitely
Yeah.
get it. And and then when you throw in the physical thing with the
Mhm.
brain, and how it affects everything. I mean, it affects your eyesight, your peripheral vision, just like all kinds of things come into the mix, depending upon the specific injury that you
Yeah.
suffered. And then, as you're saying, the road coming back is you may need to learn how to talk, how to
Mhm.
walk, you know, whatever. And I'm not sure I guess you do get back. Maybe your brain builds these at the neurological, whatever
Yeah.
your
Some do, some don't.
synapses is. Yeah. Right.
So, and it's kind of, it's really heartbreaking for the ones that don't get all of it back because it's
Yeah.
harder on them.
Right.
But it's just I say because it fascinates me. It's a fascinating thing to see, like the differences. So sorry.
Yeah, well, I would say one thing is that on the positive side, you have a rich field of
Mhm.
experience to pull from, and I'm just not the experience too, but even the emotional interaction between, let's say, your parents and
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else was injured in the accident.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
we were pretty much all. My best friend who was with us at the time, she was in the seat next to me. She had a minor concussion, and
Yeah.
my sister was, because we were in a suburban, and the drunk driver hit us on the driver's side. Sorry, I'm having to think back because I'm going off of what I've been told over the years because
Yeah.
I
Right. Sure.
don't remember any of it. But my dad was in the front driver's seat. He actually ended up with a dislocated hip, shoulder, and big toe, which he was very lucky. It was like somebody was like holding him in a space as everything like crashed around him because the drunk driver hit us going like 70 or 80 miles per
Oof.
hour. And
Yikes.
we had pulled off into the ditch and we're like trying to slow down and get out of the way to 30 miles an hour because my dad had to turn the vehicle so he wouldn't hit us in the side. But my little sister was in front of me and she broke her femur and her chin, or no, not her chin, her jaw. And then I was behind her and the seat buckled on me and I received that the brain injury. So it was just, it could have been a lot worse, but we were very, very, very lucky. Yeah. So
well, also, it's a subject that I'm exploring in this new character in this book because I call him a mechanic, so to speak, like a justice guy. That for the stuff that the justice system doesn't. So yours is a perfect example. This drunk driver, and I have a friend of mine. Actually, he just recently passed. His 23-year-old daughter was killed by a drunk driver. So how how do you make that right? How do you not how? I mean, right?
Because honestly, if I ever, the man that hit us, he also killed his passenger, who turned out he was having an affair with her and she was pregnant, killed her and the baby. Because his truck went on top of ours, flipped, and it landed on her because it kind of threw her out and just rolled on her. He was able to walk away. He was injured, but he wasn't put in jail or anything. And I've always thought over the years, I hope I never meet him in person because I wouldn't be able to handle it.
He never went to jail. He never got.
Mm-mm.
Wow.
As far as I know of, anyway. But
that's a miscarriage of justice. I mean, that's vehicular homicide. I mean, at the end of the day.
I know he was in the hospital for a while, and it was a long, drawn out case for years.
Yeah.
But
gosh, terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kudos to you to move on because you don't want to have that, anger and bitterness. That doesn't easy for me to say, but
yeah, it's not as bad as it used to be.
Yeah.
But I still don't want to ever run into him.
Oh, of course, no, absolutely not. Yeah. It's
yeah.
Anyway,
back to the books. You said you're fixing to switch up to a new series.
Yes, I'm planning. I have a couple of ideas, and one of them is going on to the next Luca, which might be the last Luca, and I have a pretty well idea how I want to end it on that
Yeah.
one. So I kind of know that. I shouldn't say. I know the main plot story. I don't know
Yeah.
how I'm going to get there. And then I have the Corey series, which I wanted to continue on, but I think I'm being pulled towards this other character that I've been trying to flesh out, like a character sketch about what drives the guy, what's his background,
Yeah.
which is things that I really never used to do when I first started out. I would just go like, I need a detective, and or whatever it is. Now I'm giving more thought to the quote unquote protagonist, and if the evil guy, if he has a voice or she, then I need to know who they are. Usually, I've done these two voices, the murderer and then the detective at the same time, kind of alternating chapters. I've done that type of thing, which I like doing. But my whole thing in the Luca series anyway is kind of Hitchcockian, or like Agatha Christie, or some of the better writers out there today, where you can't guess the ending and you can't guess who the killer is, and so that's what I've been pretty much, if you read my reviews, that's basically what I've been able to do that nobody can figure out in most of the books until the last pages, that guy or that her, or whatever. But when you do the two voices, if you were to do, like, I had a serial killer that was talking, going along, and it was really challenging because you didn't know if it was a male or a female. So to try to write that voice, and hide even the gender it was hard. But anyway, he was good enough that I brought him back in another book. But it ended up being a male. But I like that, and I've been thinking. I actually was just started reading Ruth Ware's new book, The It Girl. So far, yeah. It's early in, and I like the way she set it up so far. But it's one of those things you go back in time, so it's past and present, which I don't know if I may have done that, but I don't think I have.
It's hard to do that. Some books do it well. Some it's like they just don't get it. It's hard.
Yeah, it's always alluring to, and I have one idea already, actually two, that I keep it's actually a Google document, but a bunch of ideas, like a judge.
Like a flow of it. Yeah. I keep mine in notebooks, so it's a little crazier. That's
right. But just little ideas that, main thing is, just for argument's sake, it's been done already, but why not? 4 16-year-olds, somebody ends up dying back then. Now you see them when they're 35 and they get together again or something, or this killing or this crime that you don't know what it was is haunting these 4 characters into their adulthood. So those types of books, you can go back like that, and done well, they're very interesting. So I don't know if I'm able to do something like that. I don't know, And the other thing that is interesting, which like a Ruth Ware, she can get away with these things, but when you're writing, like, quote unquote a police procedural, forensics today, you can't hide anything. I mean,
they're solving murders from like 80 years ago these days. So
if you're writing about a story in the 1950s, there was no cell phones. It becomes so much easier.
Yeah.
And when I was writing the Luca series, and I had a bunch of books already, I don't know, maybe it was 5 or something like that. And I was going like, what am I going to write next? And I said, I wrote a cold case where he goes back in time 25 years just to, like, kind of give myself a break mentally and not have to worry about the forensics end of it so much. Yeah. And then you could use the forensic of today to go back, although I didn't kind of use the forensics in that. I didn't use that. But it's easier to write when you didn't have cameras everywhere, right?
Yeah. It's like everywhere has cameras now, period.
Right. Who's going to go rob a bank today? You got to be out of your mind.
For real? You're like, they really robbed a bank? What?
Yeah.
And then there's pictures all over the place of what
Right.
they look like. Like, okay.
I mean, again, as a crime writer, I'm constantly reading true crime and constantly listening to true crime podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. And how you can't get away with anything. I mean, you really can't,
Yeah.
So you got to really be inventive. And if you didn't have a detective as the protagonist, you either had, just a story about a crime without getting into the nitty gritty about the crime and who did it, basically more about how the crime affects the people, right? Which is a big, interesting thing that I've been thinking about a lot in this last book. I was trying to think of the one I just got at the editor, was that crime really is, in this case, had to do with rape. It's like a volcano, right? Because it spews destruction much broader than even on the victim. Of course, the victim is destroyed, but the family around. If someone is murdered, of course, the victim bears the ultimate, negativity. But what about the mom and dad, the sister, brother, the husband, wife, the kids? It's like a big circle of people that this crime affects, and it affects everybody, differently. Man, that's my dog now.
Oh,
yeah. So that's one way that you could examine. You could write a story without having to get in the nitty gritty. Shh. Oh gosh.
At least someone listens, right? So I have 4 cats and 2 dogs, so I get it.
Well, we have an old Maltese. She's 16, and that's the one there. And then my daughter is with us now, and she's here now. I'm watching her dog. So the two of them sometimes get into it. Sorry, I just moved to a different room.
You're totally fine. It is okay. I made sure mine were all in a safe spot and the windows were closed because I have one. He's a Chihuahua mix because all my pets are rescue pets, but the Chihuahua mix, he barks at everything. And I'm like, Bane, stop. So, and even if they're outside, like it's like he knows I'm doing interviews and he comes right over here to this window and just, and I'm like, dude, stop.
I mean, we have become such a pet-driven society. It's amazing.
Yes.
It really is. And in this last book too, I put something in about dog nappings.
Oh.
And yeah, exactly. I'm not going to give it away, but
it is amazing because I could have more pets if my husband would let me. So
actually, we're the reverse in this household. If it was up to my wife, we'd have more. But I attribute it a little bit. I mean, obviously, I'm older than you, and my daughters are 30s.
Yeah.
So, but when like a mother, right, which is to me is just like, the best person in the world. A mom, when the kids leave, you need something to mother, And obviously, I didn't cut it.
Oh.
So, but the way she treats the dog is just like, okay, you just and dote over him. You just do because that's that motherly instinct. And as baby boomers, if we are, we don't have the kids in the house anymore. So the dog is
the de facto kid. Yes. My mom did that when my little brother was the last one to leave the house. And like when he did, she went and got this little long-haired Chihuahua, and that is her baby. And it's so funny because I was like, Mom, you replaced us with Ollie because that's what his name is. And it's like, Ollie's our little brother. So, and it cracks everybody up.
Yeah, it's crazy, but you're not alone. It's very, very common. I mean, now when you go out to the restaurants, I mean, you have to see a couple of dogs. I mean, it's just impossible not to.
It is.
So everybody, and then I told my wife, one step I'm not going is just stroller thing. Okay. If you get a stroller for the dog, I'm out,
Yeah. And I mean, I probably, I don't know, I say that we used to have, so my husband's grandpa, when he passed away, he had a Yorkie that we took in and we kept her and she finally reached an age where she wasn't doing good. And she got where she went blind and we found out she had cancer and stuff. But like she was small enough I didn't have to get a stroller, thankfully, but I would carry her whenever we'd go places just because she could smell like the new things because she couldn't see anything anymore. But it was just, will probably be one of those, like it's a stroller if my dog is like to a point, the bigger dog. Anyway, I don't know. She's, knock on wood, still doing okay, but she's getting up there. My big dog, she's a boxer mix. Wow, but I'm just like, no, stop getting old. You're not supposed to get old. She's 9. And her joints and stuff are getting bad.
I know all about it. Our Maltese is 16.
Yeah.
16. So she's going blind too. She can't smell. She can't hear.
And little dogs, they live so much longer than the big dogs. Like, exactly. It's nice because Ivy, she was the little Yorkie. She was a teacup Yorkie. She lived till she was 12, I think is what we determined her age was, 12 or 13. So, but she had problems earlier on before she got older. So it was, But that's awesome that you put that in your story, a little pet napping thing. That is so cool. Oh, so you also mentioned you played the tenor saxophone, right? Does that inspire you to write scenes on occasion?
Well, the Corey series, which is actually, that's like an acronym for it, but it's called the Suspenseful Secret series. The main character is a session musician in New York, and it takes place in Manhattan. And it's another story that was rattling around in my mind for a long time. Yeah. So he's a very accomplished session musician, but he doesn't have a solo career, and he's in his mid-30s, married, living in an apartment in Brooklyn, commuting to Manhattan, playing on all the great albums, but he just gets paid for the day, and he goes in to make a demo tape in the studio. And of course he's going to like 1 o'clock in the morning when it's like $200 an hour instead of $1,000 an hour. And he sees this, I call him like a hit master, like sort of like a Michael Jackson type of guy. Yeah. Who everything he writes is, just amazing, like an Adele or something. And he's in the studio himself, and he's played on his albums. Yeah. And anyway, he goes by, he's by himself. He goes in his own room. He does his demo. On the way out, he looks in the window, and he sees the guy slumped over the piano, and basically he OD'd.
Oh, no.
Right. But what the story is that on the piano were 8 songs that this guy had written, new songs. So my character takes the songs, puts them in his backpack, and now what should he do? So
holy crap.
Yeah. So and anyway, he does use them, and he becomes a big star. But then somebody knows, and it just goes on. Yeah.
Man, that's intense, but that's a great pull. It'll really pull you in, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
it's a good hook. It was a good hook, So the little bit of problem I had with that was that on book 1, he, like many of these characters in real life anyway, they make it big and they become arrogant, and then they start cheating on the wife and they get into the drugs. And that's what this guy did. So he went up and he went down. But then he ends up redeeming himself. But he was not a very likable character, so to speak. Yeah. But books 2 and 3, I had him. He ends up being very big with cancer with kids, dedicating his life to that, and a bunch of different. Then he gets into the transplant. It's more like helping kids, how he goes along in books 2 and 3, which was another interesting journey, learning about the transplant, illegal transplants, and all that stuff that's going on. It's just there's a lot out there. There's a lot of crazy. It's craziness. Yes. Absolute craziness. But anyway, that's the music. But what I do find, and there's a fair number of authors that I'm friendly with that have an interest in music. And so a lot of times I'll start to write, and I'll write, I don't know, maybe I'm writing for 2 or 3 hours, and I'm feeling, a little tired or mentally tired, not physically tired. And I'll put it aside, and then I'll come in and I'll play for an hour or 2. And then I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do? You want me to scale Mount Everest? What? I'm ready to go. And then I go sit down again and I start writing again. So it's more like it rejuvenates my creative spirit. It's not giving me ideas, but it just gets the well feeling like, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure how to describe it. Yeah. But it's helpful for me anyway.
That's good. Yes. Because everybody needs something like that. So that's good.
Yeah. And it could be because and I know that even taking a walk, I've done that too. I go outside, I don't like to go to the gym in the afternoon. I do that in the morning. But sometimes I take a walk, and when you go for a nice long walk, and it rejuvenates you.
Yeah.
Mentally.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for being on the show today.
I appreciate the opportunity to meet you. It was great. I really like it. I like your thing. I like your opening video.
Thank you.
It's very cool. Yeah.
Go ahead and tell our readers and viewers where they can find you and your work. I know you have an awesome website that I've been checking out. And
thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably the easiest way. Is that so? It's www.danpetrosini.com. So it might be. Well, if you're not seeing it, it's Dan, DAN, PETROSINI.com. But as my dad, who's 96, says, forget about spelling my name. Just make the check out the cash.
I mean, it works. So,
right.
But again, thank you so much for being on. And you guys, if you're listening, make sure you check out his work. He's got some amazing books out there.
Thank you so much for having me, Maddie. It was a great afternoon to chat with you.
Yeah.
Wish you much more success.
Thank you.